Hi guys, I'm Libertman, forced to be alone but free to decide how to live it. Today we're going to talk about something deeper than dating psychology, deeper than relationships, and even deeper than male-female dynamics. We're going to talk about spaces. Specifically, the spaces where men used to exist, grow, connect, and become men. Spaces that for decades allowed men to share identity, brotherhood, mutual support, skill building, and masculine communion. Spaces that no longer exist. And because those spaces disappeared, an entire generation of men is now isolated, disoriented, fragmented, lonely, misunderstood, digitally addicted, socially disconnected, stripped of the masculine environments that once shaped them. If you feel like you don't fit anywhere in modern society, this video is going to explain why. And more importantly, we will rethink how men can create new spaces, both digital and physical, to reclaim their masculine social ecosystem. So let's go back for a moment. For most of human history, men gathered naturally, not intentionally, but socially, structurally, culturally, and ritually. These were the primary male spaces of the 20th century. Brotherhoods and fraternal organizations, for example, the Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, local brotherhoods, religious brotherhood. I don't know if these are the best to mention, but to depict the idea, right? Men found identity, rituals, intergenerational mentorship, structured hierarchy, purpose beyond the family. Also, another spaces were churches and religious communities. Whether religious or cultural, men once had stability, moral direction, routine, community responsibility, collective identity. They also get some of that in the military service, that it has been a rite of passage for millions, in which men gain, some group of men gain discipline, danger facing, camaraderie, hierarchy, pride, embodied masculinity, and obligation to a greater whole. Then another spaces were local bars, taverns, men's clubs, places where men decompressed, talked openly, shared opinions, and bonded. These spaces were for men only, without judgment. Also, sports clubs and amateur leagues, football, basketball, cricket, hockey, soccer, boxing gyms, martial arts dojos, in where men experience competitiveness, discipline, team belonging, healthy aggression, physical expression. Also, another places were workshops and hobby groups, car repair groups, mechanics clubs, hunting clubs, fishing communities, engineering clubs. Men share skills, tools, wisdom, and problem solving. And another space were neighborhood communities. Men talked, advised, collaborated, mentored younger men, supported one another. These spaces created collective masculine identity. So what happened to those spaces? The last 25 years reshaped society more radically than any previous period, not because of war, but because of technology, ideology, and structural change. So let's break it down. First, we have a feminization of neutral public spaces. Many traditional male environments became regulated, supervised, feminized, politically sanitized. Women began to occupy, participate, or supervise almost all previously male-only communities. This was framed as inclusivity, but the unintended consequence was the disappearance of male-only social ecosystems. Men stopped talking openly. Masculine expression was labeled as toxic. Competition was discouraged. Hierarchy was dismantled. Direct language became dangerous. Playful banter was pathologized as aggression. Also, we had the collapse of the institutions that glued men together. Church attendance dropped, military service became optional, fraternal organizations aged and died, neighborhoods atomized, bars became dating markets instead of male social sanctuaries. Then we also got the digitalization replacing real physical communities. The internet replaced in-person conversation, in-person mentorships, teamwork, shared struggle, and real bonding, and replaced them with scrolling, passivity, isolation, parasocial relationships, hypersexualized content, and short dopamine loops. We also saw how social media redirected all male attention toward women. Men stopped bonding with each other. They started commenting on women posts, following women, liking women, validating women, simping, competing against each other for women they don't know. The digital world became female-centered. Women produce the content, men produce the attention. And what is the result? Men's social spaces collapsed. Women's social power expanded. We also saw how the pandemic completed the destruction. Lockdowns eliminated gyms, bars, clubs, group activities, hobby circles, sports, and gatherings. And after reopening, many of those spaces never came back. People never returned. Community habits died. So let's see this situation of the loss of these spaces, how the loss of these spaces affect each of the C4PC macro group. Not all men suffered equally. Each type lost a different kind of nourishment from these spaces. So let's start with the internal rationals. These men lost quiet spaces for male discussion, intellectual debates, structured brotherhood, mentorship from older men. Internal rational men became isolated, over-digitalized thinkers, and detached from real community. So they suffer silently. In the case of the external rationals, these men lost leadership arenas, competition, organized hierarchies, goal-oriented groups, skill-based communities. These men became directionless, lacking environments to express drive, strength, or ambition outside work. They suffer through stagnation. In the case of the internal emotionals, these men lost intimate male friendships, safe spaces for depth, long philosophical conversations, slow emotional bonding. Internal emotional men became emotionally starved, trapped in isolation. They suffered through loneliness. And in the case of the external emotional men, These men lost social circles, group energy, bonding rituals, fun, expressive environments, and belonging, the sense of belonging. External emotional men became socially anxious and lacking community. They suffer through this disconnection. So, who suffered the most? In an intensity scale, we can say that internal emotionals suffered the most through the loss of emotional connection, then the internal rationals through loss of intellectual brotherhood, followed by the external emotionals with loss of social belonging, and then the external rational through loss of a structured male hierarchy and mission. But all of them were damaged, but each type was damaged in a different way. So, why we must create new male spaces in the digital world? Society is not going back to traditional masculinity, it's not going back to religious unity, to military rights, stable communities, or analog social life as we knew it. At least not yet. The digital world now rules all social interaction. So instead of resisting it, the wise approach would be to occupy it, to claim masculine space, to build male communities. Because right now, the digital world is 80% female-centered, controlled by attention economics, hostile to masculinity, optimized for emotional manipulation, designed to extract wealth from lonely men. But we can change that. This decade is the transition decade. Men who build male communities now will define the masculine culture of the next 30 years. So, let's see which new digital spaces men can create. Here are potential spaces that would rebalance male identity and provide what we lost. For example, male-only digital clubs, focusing on masculinity, philosophy, fitness, discipline, brotherhood, a structure moderated with mission and direction. Another one would be a skill-based digital guilds, programming, engineering, carpentry, mechanics, music, film editing, a digital revival of the workshop. Then another one would be digital rites of passage. That would be structured programs teaching discipline, resilience, financial independence, emotional maturity, leadership. That would be a modern substitute for lost initiation rituals. Then also personality-based circles. Like in this case, it might be groups through the C4PC model. So it would be different groups for internal rational men, groups for external rational men, groups for internal emotional men, and groups for external emotional men, where each man interacts with others who share his temperament and struggles. Another type of spaces would be digital brotherhood pods, groups of 3 to 6 men meeting weekly to discuss goals, maintain accountability, to share challenges, and to support each other. Another space might be private communities focused on growth, not dating. Most male spaces online today revolve around women. We need spaces that revolve around men, around goals, mission, and meaning. Another possible space would be local meetups reborn through digital curation. Once the digital groups are formed, we rebuild in-person masculine gatherings through hiking groups, training circles, philosophy nights, co-working for men, martial arts sessions. The digital world becomes the seed, and the physical world becomes the tree, through a transition over time. And which are the best digital spaces for each of the C4PC personality types? Because each type needs a different ecosystem. So let's start with the internal rationals. The optimal spaces for internal rational would be philosophy circles, book clubs, long-form discussion forums, structured debate groups, or male intellectual guilds. And why? Well, because internal rational men need depth, structure, and meaning to feel anchored. In the case of the external rationals, their optimal spaces would be fitness communities, business mastermind groups, competitive goal-based platforms, leadership training groups, or financial independence circles. And why? Because external rational men need challenge, hierarchy, and mission. In the case of the internal emotionals, their optimal spaces would be introspective men's circles, emotional processing groups, creative communities, and philosophy and psychology hybrid circles. And why? Because internal emotional men need connection, depth, and vulnerability within a masculine frame. And in the case of the external emotionals, the optimal spaces for them would be social male networks, voice chat meetup groups, expressive communities, gaming squads with masculine leadership, or creative collaborations. Because external emotional men need belonging, interaction, and dynamic social energy. So, this digital world is our temporary home, but it's not our destiny. Men need in-person male environments too. It is biological, it's also psychological, historical, it is necessary. But until society builds new analog spaces, we must reclaim territory in the digital world. That is the time in which we are living in right now, in this transition. And not to escape life, but to gather strength so we can rebuild life. Digital masculine communities are not the end goal, but they are the bridge to get to where we need to come back. A bridge toward a future where men have brotherhood again, where men have purpose again, where men have identity again, where men have rituals again, and where men have spaces again. The disappearance of male spaces weakened us. The creation of new spaces will rebuild us. We are not going back to the past. We are building the next version of masculinity. So, thank you to get up to this point of the video. If you enjoyed this content or was helpful, please like the video, share it with someone who can benefit from it, and subscribe to the channel. That supports a lot the content of the channel and will make me rethink to continue producing this content. So thank you very much, much courage, take care, and see you in the next one.